Hey guys, Poro here with another video, this time with my first Worlds video in almost 2 years. After taking off 2024 due to some unfortunate circumstances, I'm back to work triple overtime for Worlds 2025, and this is the first of 17 team breakdowns for the tournament. 3 LCP, 3 LTA, 3 LEC, 4 LPL, and 4 LCK. Now, this breakdown is honestly a bit premature. I usually would prefer to wait until a team has played all of their matches in playoffs so that I can watch all of their games before writing the script. However, even though we know 11 of the 17 teams qualified, not a single one of them has been eliminated from their region's playoffs yet, and I have less than a month to pump out these 17 videos, a much tighter schedule than what I did for MSI. So I have to start now, and I decided to start with teams I feel like I know the best, which is why the first breakdown will be for PSG Talon from the LCP. PSG has had an interesting year. First Maple and the old general manager left, and Paris Saint-Germain split ties with the org as the team rebranded to Talon. With this change came a new star player, as their big acquisition of Fofo would come through. For people who don't know Fofo due to lack of international showings, all you really need to know is that he's insanely good. He's been near the top of the table for LPL mid laners for a while, and is widely considered to be the most skilled mid laner to ever exist from the APAC region. With Fofo back in tow, the team looked to make a run for some international competitions. They would come just barely short in both Split 1 and 2, finishing 2nd and 3rd respectively. At this point, Fofo became injured, and the team needed to look for a new replacement mid laner for Split 3. Inspired by Levi's showing at MSI, longtime PCS and LMS veteran Maple decided to announce his unretirement, as he would replace Fofo and attempt to make a run with many members of the original legendary Flash Wolves core from the mid-2010s. Along with Maple came the rebirth of the partnership with Paris Saint-Germain, and the team rebranded back to PSG Talon. As for how Split 3 went, it was quite possibly the greatest case of an unpredictable up and down we've ever seen. They started out going 0-6 in game score, getting demoted from the upper group and down to the lower group by a lower group team to make the score now 0-8, and once in the lower group, they would begin their turnaround as they would go 9-0 straight into their Worlds qualification. I have plenty of thoughts on what the cause of their early season issues, as well as their Stark turnaround was, but I'll save those thoughts until after I've introduced the players. All of these players should be familiar at this point, as the team has kept their same core together for years, starting with their top laner, hold on, wait a second.
上路 driver 阿志上路 Kiaya 阿志现在 driver 还有阿志两人的激战，我跟你讲。
Yeah, okay. He's a longtime veteran of the PCS, having played in Tier 1 League for 5 years. Ever since joining PSG, he's faced a large amount of success, winning 4 straight PCS titles before the formation of the LCP. During this time, he's made a name for himself as a weak side specialist who plays champions that can lose lane gracefully and play out 1v2 situations effectively. He's a solid player who you can almost always rely on to be effective in teamfights and without resources. He really shined in the 2024 lane swap meta, where he was able to display his ability to smartly play out situations where he was vastly outnumbered on his side of the map, and I was really impressed with how he looked at MSI 2024 specifically. That said, he has a couple of weaknesses. His champion pool is large, but it's large in very specific ways. He can play a lot of tanks and can play most standard bruisers, but his pool lacks carries. He's tried some Gwen, Aurora, and Jace here and there for example, but it's almost never looked anything better than decent and is by no means actually a reliable asset to use in draft. This issue also lines up pretty predictably with his other weakness, that being his nothing more than okay 1-against-1 laning. He's really good at knowing how to stem the bleeding and play from behind, but he's not the best at winning out on skill matchups or knowing how to push a lane lead if he has it. These two factors make him very effective as a role player, but not so flexible when you need someone to take on the burden of handling more resources and more responsibility on the outcome of games. PSG had a new pickup this year for jungle, that being Karsa. Karsa is easily the greatest player to come from the LMS ever, and has a strong case for being on a top 10 all-time jungle list. He's had multiple fantastic splits in LPL and many international showings. That said, it hasn't been amazing for Karsa these past couple of years. Karsa has spent much of his career being a mechanical talent, routinely bringing out champions like Lee Sin and Nidalee. Over time though, he's had to change his playstyle to a more supportive one as his mechanics have declined. He's been playing for over 10 years, so it only makes sense. When he joined CFO in 2024, they were supposed to be a PCS super team that would cruise its way into Worlds. However, they were a pretty large disappointment and only managed to finish 4th, despite the team being stacked with huge names. With this past year of failure, Karsa was determined to show that he could still compete at a high level, replacing Junja on PSG for 2025. Karsa spent most of the year leaning into that supportive style on champions like Sejuani, Skarner, and Maokai, and the team found decent success. That said, this current meta is an AD fighter meta, and it's admittedly taken Karsa quite a while to adapt to the new champion pool, requiring a mechanically demanding playstyle. He's been able to look stronger recently though, and we'll have to see if returning to Worlds is the push Karsa needs to regain some of his previous form. In the mid lane, we've gotten to see the return of Maple, and expectations were pretty high. Maple is considered by many to be the GOAT of the LMS and PCS. While not having as high of a ceiling as Karsa, Maple spent most of his career staying in the region and dominating instead of being imported. He was imported a couple times to regions like the LPL and LCS, but he always returned back to the LMS and PCS to continue winning in his home region. With Talon faltering at the finish line when it came to qualifying internationally so far, the fans were hoping Maple could work his magic and be the difference this team needed. PSG were able to qualify to Worlds with Maple, but maybe it hasn't looked quite as amazing as one would have hoped. There are many factors that could be contributing to this. For one, he took essentially 7 months off of competitive play as a whole, so it can only be expected that he may come back a little rusty. Another factor to consider is that while Maple has always looked pretty okay on mages in the current meta, his strongest meta in recent history was the AD marksman mid meta. He was great on champions like Tristana, Corki, Zeri, Lucian, and even Yone. Apart from Yone, none of those champions are really played in the current meta as we've returned to a mage champion pool. Maple hasn't looked bad on these champions by any means, but it's certainly not a playstyle he's comfortable hard carrying on. Regardless, one thing has been clear. Maple, at least in this meta, has to act less like the focus of the team he's used to, but instead more as a supportive player who can do his job on the champions that work best for the team's draft. The third member of the OG Flash Wolves roster on this team is Betty, and who I personally think is the best player on this team at the moment. Anytime Betty has been in the PCS or LCP, he's always been at least a top 2-3 bot laner in the region, if not the best. He's spent time in the LPL, and although he was never a top half bot laner there, he lasted for multiple years, which is a testament to how good he can be. Betty can play almost every marksman and has played plenty of great games on a wide variety of champions. That said, I feel as though Betty has done his best work on system ADCs that have a job to execute in the game like Varus, Lucian, Jhin, and Senna. He's had a couple of good games on more active champions as well, but for the most part, it feels like his team struggles when they put all of the eggs in his basket. He's felt pretty invisible on some of the 1v9 carries like Yunara, Kai'Sa, Corki, Vayne, and Ezreal. That said, Betty did just have a dominant 12-0 performance on Corki against CFO in Game 1 of the upper bracket finals, and PSG have been looking a little better as the split has gone on, so maybe they can start picking these types of champions for him again. Finally, PSG have their support, Woody. I've never been a massive Woody believer. I think he has a lot of the same problems that many mid-tier supports have, such as engaging without follow-up, dying when looking for vision, and getting chunked before the fight even starts. His lane phase can also be quite underwhelming. That said, Woody has 2 advantages that most other supports from the LCP don't have. For starters, his mechanics are actually pretty good. He has a few moments that make me think he might have a higher ceiling than expected. His other advantage, and the one that defines him the most in my opinion, is his willingness to play just about every archetype of support that exists. He's not shy about picking lane dominant supports, mages, enchanters, marksmen, engage, or anything else you can think of. If it's strong in the meta, he's willing to learn it, and I think that makes for a very valuable asset in draft. I don't think Woody is a great support or anything, but he definitely adds value to the team overall. With the players all accounted for, we can zoom out to the team as a whole. To fully understand how this team might do at Worlds, we have to talk about what happened to PSG and why they went from a top-of-the-table team in Split 1 and 2 to an 0-8 fall from grace in Split 3. There are a few small problems I can point out here and there for sure, such as subpar objective setups, struggling to come back from behind, or misunderstanding how certain champions in their comp want to play the game out, but their big main flaw comes down to this. PSG lost 8 games in a row because they don't have anyone on the team who can actually step up and carry. Their top, mid, bot, and support are all role players at best, and Karsa doesn't have the mechanics or the practice on high impact champions to be that carry himself. PSG didn't have this problem before because they had Fofo. While in the LPL, Fofo was always viewed as a high resource player. You draft around him, you play around his lane, you put the eggs into his basket, and in return he'll win the game for you. This is how PSG played in the first half of the year, and it's a style that worked very well because of how good Fofo is at managing high resources. Once Fofo got injured, there was nobody on the team who could fill that role as the high resource mid-late game beast. As such, PSG became a team who was incredibly passive. Almost all of their matches at the beginning of the split went like this. All 5 players would play their champions to a decent degree, they would fall behind slightly in early game, and from there they would bleed out and lose. Nobody seemed bold enough to make calls, nobody was willing to go for a game-winning fight, and game states as a whole just never progressed for them. Their demotion series against the Vikings was some of the most uninspiring gameplay I've ever seen from a team, and it felt like they were on the verge of total collapse. But despite all of this, they did turn it around and qualify for Worlds by winning 8 straight games and making it to upper bracket finals and playoffs. What did PSG improve? Were they able to fix their issues? The answer, in my opinion, is not really. Their win streak started as a 4-0 against the Chiefs and DFM, arguably the 2 worst performing teams in the entire world in Tier 1 play, tied probably with W7M from LTA South. PSG was expected to win these games by a landslide, and anything else would have been a tragedy. They then won their rematch against the Vikings, which was likely expected, and their first surprise came when they stomped GAM 2-0 in their Worlds qualification match. Despite that though, I hold the firm belief that the series went the way it did, not because PSG necessarily stepped it up that much, but because GAM just felt like they completely collapsed once playoffs started. GAM's whole thing all year, especially for the first half of Split 3, was that they were fearless in mid-games and developed their leads through aggression and playmaking. Against both PSG and Team Secret Wales, GAM were almost AFK and showed none of that. But I don't want to take away from PSG's win streak, because the truth is that if PSG had showed up to playoffs the way they looked at the beginning of the year, they probably would have been trounced. PSG did make one major improvement to their game that helped them in basically all of their wins. I mentioned that PSG's biggest issue was that nobody was equipped to step up and handle the burden of large resources. And well, PSG still really don't have someone who can do that, but they did have a player step up, and that was Karsa. Now, it would be disingenuous to imply that Karsa was the only one to step up, as it was more of a team effort, but the team has clearly made an effort to play around Karsa more, especially in the early game. I still have yet to see proof that PSG can come back from losing game state, or that they're willing to pull the trigger in pivotal mid-game moments, but that's mostly because in their wins, I haven't had to. PSG's current game plan has allowed them to gain large enough early game leads that they can win through regular fundamentals by default. The way in which PSG have grabbed these leads is by aggressively playing for respawned camp timers. More so than any other team in this region, PSG have heavily leaned into the idea of playing around their pushing lanes to allow Karsa to invade. Basically, every time the lane conditions are favorable, Karsa is in the enemy jungler's face trying to contest camps or brute force a steal. They've been going after buffs, raptors, gromp, everything. Karsa started prioritizing champions good at invading like Pantheon and Jarvan, and he's been able to generate large camp leads in most games. So for PSG, the name of the game is getting ahead early. If they can get those advantages, they can hide their other weaknesses and maybe close out the game. Even this isn't a guarantee though, as we did see PSG throw a 13k gold lead against CFO in playoffs somehow, which was truly a sight to behold in its own right, and has proved to me that PSG have in fact not fixed their core issues yet, but they're certainly a team who can apply pressure and force the enemy team to outplay them to earn the win. Also, I want to re-emphasize that PSG's year is not over yet. They still have a lower bracket finals match against Team Secret Wales, and potentially a rematch against CFO in Grand Finals. That's 2 more series to work on improving more, and maybe they'll be a completely different team by the time Worlds rolls around. But as of right now, this is my read of their team, and I expect their games to be decided by how well both teams play early. That's all I have for you for this one. 1 down, 16 to go. I want to mention that I recently started a Patreon for people who want to support me more while I'm making these videos. I have 3 tiers, each with varying amounts of benefits including different types of behind the scenes content, and even a custom Poro drawing that I'll display in video outros. Most recently, I uploaded an unedited 5-hour rewatch of the Worlds 2022 Grand Finals between T1 and TRX. If any of that interests you, check out the Patreon link in the description. I'll see you all for the next one. Bye!